So we're lucky to have Susie here with us today. She is the Director of Training and Development for Xenium, and she has 17 years of experience in senior leadership, management of many HR departments, and lately she's been focusing quite a bit on the culture development side as well as attracting and retaining talent for companies as well. So this is a topic right up her alley. She currently directs Xenium's training programs and has built such a great program, so hopefully you can attend some of our live events. We have about 2 to 3 workshops per month, and you can find those on www.xeniumhr.com/events, and all the events are listed there. She has a BA in psychology from U of O and holds a SPHR certification. She's also, I want to just put a plug in for this workshop that we have coming up on April 16th, but she is speaking and moderating the Attracting and Retaining Talent workshop, and it's a panel discussion, so we're going to have 3 HR leaders talk about the attracting and retaining talent. So it'll really play off of this webinar really well. And at the end of this session, each of you will receive a promo code for 20% off after this event. So look for the last slide on that, and we'll also follow up in an email with that. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Susie and let her run with it.
Good morning, everybody. Brandon, I think I need my slides queued.
Okay, I'll do my best to go in motion for you.
So talent strategies seem to be top of mind for many businesses, from small employer to global enterprise. And I imagine everyone is tired of hearing about the recession, but the reality is that many businesses, including many of our clients, were faced with difficult decisions to tighten and cut people expenses in order to weather some of those storms. And of course, there were some avant-garde leaders and entrepreneurs who looked at the downturn in the economy as an opportunity. We had a fortunate opportunity to have Jeff Gauss of Prolific Software speak at a CEO panel that Xenium co-sponsored the end of last year. And interestingly, his strategy was not only to retain all of his people during the recession, but he also gave everyone raises, and in exchange asked his people to work harder than they ever had before. And this allowed him to retain his key talent and grow his market share during a time when other businesses were cutting compensation and people. So now that we're seeing signs of recovery and growth, businesses are really wanting to hold on to their assets, the greatest being their top talent. Another probably larger challenge is the ability to acquire the skill sets needed to stay competitive and relevant. According to Deloitte's predictions for 2014 research report, they state that 2014 will be a hard year to keep people. And the problem is that we don't necessarily face a shortage of people, but it's more of a shortage of key skills. And some of the most commonly cited skill areas are in computer science, life science, mathematics, and engineering. More than 60% of all companies cite leadership gaps as their top business challenge. Some of this has to do with a growing demand for diverse technical skill sets, as well as baby boomers beginning to retire in larger volumes. Also reporting some relevant information is Towers Watson. They have a 2013-14 talent management reward study that's indicating that U.S. companies report similar challenges with attracting and retaining talent. So about 66% have problems attracting critical skill employees. So that's workers with knowledge and skills that organizations need to compete. They're becoming harder to find and oftentimes command a premium. 49% have trouble attracting high potential employees, so people with certain aptitudes. And in some industries, demographics play a big role in the talent shortage, while in others, changes in technology make it difficult to keep up with increasing demand and the need to master new skills. Then on the attracting top performing employees, other end of the spectrum, the retention side, 35% of those 48% who have a hard time attracting, 35% of those are struggling to retain them. So employers are continuing to reevaluate how to find and keep the talent they need, and traditional methods they're finding don't always work. So there's some more targeted differentiation and effective career management proving to be more critical than ever. Also noteworthy is 41% have problems retaining critical skill employees, and the percentages that have been trending upward for the last 4 years. And Deloitte, or actually Towers Watson, foresees this becoming an even greater challenge as companies work to attract top talent away from their competitors. So the latest in engagement retention strategies seem to be consistent with one of some of the best companies are doing. So within Fortune 100's best companies for 2014, the focus is in the following areas. One being culture development and environment. So people want to work for organizations that fulfill a larger mission or purpose. Organizations that have purpose and values alignment have more engaged employees and less turnover. And we're seeing this more and more. In addition to shared values and meaningful work, there continues to be a trend towards open workspaces, employee-friendly desks, and office environments with flexible work arrangements. Deloitte's research indicates that other benefits such as free food and employee-provided daycare will accelerate in 2014 as well. Also keep in mind some of these are larger companies in that survey. Wellness programs are still continuing to be on the rise, partly as a strategy for controlling healthcare costs, but even probably more so as a talent management strategy. So wellness programs are focused not only on physical, but actually on mental health and overall well-being, that so-called mind-body balance concept. Many of the best companies on Fortune's list this year provide health incentives for participating in wellness initiatives and behaviors, and they're also extending participation incentives to family members and dependents. Another key factor that showed up with the 100 best companies is mobile technology. So employers are providing tools for flexible work and efficiency, as well as just general communication facilitation. So an example may be mobile devices to automate work processes where they weren't otherwise automated. I know at Xenium, one of the things that we did, and it wasn't too far in the past, few years back, a lot of our HR business partners who were out and about working with clients at one point did not have laptops. So coming back to the office, they were spending a lot of time doing administrative catch-up, which now we have mobile devices and laptops in order for us to manage our work more efficiently and get more done. Also, as an activity or initiative within this 100 Best group, are structured employee development programs. So this is a more mindful approach that's being taken to designing roadmaps and development opportunities that are focused both on employee aspirations and the business needs looking into the future. So the activities associated with that are coaching, advising, and identifying projects. So those projects could be job shadow, job rotation, mentorships, and stretch assignments. Also career pathing and planning, leadership skill development, and diversity skill building, especially in companies that do business globally. And an example of what one of the companies was doing was a cross-cultural team assignment to broaden that perspective and skill set. The value of a productive and collaborative culture is becoming more recognized. We've been hearing about it for the past few years from successful companies such as Zappos and Google. Intel, which is renowned for its iconic culture, has a turnover rate of only about 2%, which is surprising. And Google, with almost zero turnover, gets an estimated 7,000 unsolicited applications every day. So a great culture, rather, can make the critical difference between organizational success and dismal failure. So it impacts just about every business metric, from customer service to productivity to profitability. It's the key to retention because employees don't want to leave a great culture. And it's also the key to recruitment because applicants are clamoring to get in. So ultimately what defines a company culture is the collective beliefs, values, and behaviors of the people in the organization, which many of you likely know. It's not the products or services that bind the company together, but more of the culture and that strong sense of beliefs and values that everyone from the CEO to the receptionist all share. Culture development consists of first identifying the why or the purpose behind the business, developing a set of shared core values, expectations, and behaviors, and then the real key is integrating these guiding principles into all of the business and people practices. And for company-wide support and integration to take hold, defining core values should really ideally involve the entire company. From top to bottom, everyone in the organization is a stakeholder and deserves the opportunity to contribute. This helps instill a sense of ownership, and it inspires each individual to strive up to those principles that they help create. So some example opportunities to glean or gain employee input might be stay interviews, so asking folks what keeps you here and what would cause you to look, just general satisfaction surveys. There's some culture assessment tools, or you can look at your benchmarks in terms of turnover and exit interviews. Why are people leaving your organization? So once you have the core values identified and key actions associated, the rubber meets the road when those values and expectations are integrated through all of your people programs, from recruiting to onboarding to performance management and recognition. And Xenium has had some great success with this internally. And one of the things we recommend frequently is developing an ongoing culture team to champion that cultural change and drive team building and recognition programs. So fundamentally, if you don't have trust or communication issues within your leadership, you need to start solving these issues first. And interestingly enough, in the research that I cited in the beginning of this presentation, the leadership gap seemed to be a big issue for a lot of organizations. So creating an organizational culture where trust and open communication are emphasized and demonstrated by leaders is one of the most effective ways to attract and retain top talent. Building this leadership strength will also garner higher efficiency, employee loyalty, and greater financial returns. So it's really worth your efforts. And if you don't have a defined culture that embraces trust and communication, then it's really important that you define it and live it really starting now. Employee relationships with their supervisors have a direct impact on their level of commitment and performance. You know, they're the primary point of contact for setting performance expectations, conducting those career development discussions, assessing results, and communicating pay decisions. And managers are important drivers of employee engagement, positively and sometimes, unfortunately, negatively. Businesses are really seeing the value now in investing in training resources to equip their frontline managers with the leadership skills needed to hire the best and get the most from those people. And we'll talk a little bit more about training and development in a couple minutes. With regard to talent management, here are a few activities that you may want to consider in order to identify opportunities to grow your current talent pool, keep your highly skilled and achieving people engaged, as well as stay competitive in your market. So workforce analysis pertains to evaluating your supply and demand for talent, conducting a gap analysis, and then developing your talent acquisition strategies. It's a systematic and strategic approach based on current and anticipated business needs, as opposed to just simply filling vacancies. Talent reviews may be conducted on a scheduled basis by the leadership team to help identify high-pose, those high-potential employees, and determine the best utilization of your people. And typically those are conducted once a year, but maybe more frequently given the size and growth and changes in your business. In those talent reviews, employees are reviewed on the basis of their aptitude, engagement, and aspiration. Succession planning and replacement charts are used for anticipated separations or transitions to address those losses of knowledge, skills, and abilities. In terms of performance management, the newer approach that we're seeing is focused on development, some more future thinking versus evaluation, and is really focused on providing that line of sight and aligning team and individual contributions with the overall organizational goals. ongoing feedback and accountability are still huge engagement opportunities that many managers do not practice consistently. The objective behind career development is to match talents and aspirations with the business needs and then create a working plan to get there. So career enrichment and advancement opportunities are one of the most often cited reasons for joining or leaving an organization. And this is why high-performing organizations are looking to reinvigorate their career management strategies. Best practice would be to chart out a clear career path, including competencies and development recommendations and options, and then provide managers and employees with self-service tools and resources. And this is something that I can speak personally we're working on internally within Xenium. And it doesn't necessarily have to be career pathing that goes up in the organization. It could be, up, down, side to side, just providing people with opportunities to expand their skills and utilize their talents in the most effective way. So specific to training and development, identifying and building competencies that are specifically based on your growth objectives or your business plan not only helps retain talent, but it yields performance results for your organization. So here's a list of key opportunities for training and development, which are really kind of the good old OTJ, on the job type activities. So mentorship programs are a great way to engage people where both are learning something in the process. The key there is to match people accordingly and give them some structure, resources to be effective. Cross-training and job rotations help broaden skills and build business perspective as well as expand knowledge base. And then to enhance leadership and problem-solving skills, which seem to be gaps for many organizations, you may consider placing emerging or newer leaders in intense assignments with some, expectations or precisely described development challenges, or identify the riskiest and most challenging projects across the company and assign those to rising stars. Development programs that provide challenging assignments that include resources and trust and support from the organization, whether it be online resources, tools, mentors, coaches, they help provide that real-world experience and can also lead to greater innovation. When we look at rewards and recognition, there's some things to consider. First, knowing that you are or not competitive in the marketplace will be paramount in retaining your top performers. So if you haven't done this at some point, you may consider undergoing a compensation review or survey for your organization, or at least for key positions to help or to identify where you're paying within the market and to keep competitors from wooing away your most gifted employees. According to the Deloitte 2014 survey, companies with a retention plan in place reported that they are going to be ramping up financial and non-financial incentives in the year ahead. So different types of reward and incentive programs are effective at motivating employees, and it's really unique to your organization and your group. They can be promoted through both monetary and non-monetary awards. I know this can be challenging for a lot of smaller businesses to come up with all the fancy perks and benefits that we see from the big high-tech giants that get our attention. But there are definitely ways to be creative with non-monetary and those more intrinsic benefits. The key is to recognize the needs of your employees and involve them in the design of any program and finding out really what motivates them. And then lastly, measure the results, which is asking people if your reward program really makes a difference in their employment choices, and then measure turnover before and after the program. Many organizations continue to give merit increases and bonus payouts to employees who fail to meet performance expectations or who just meet them, while at the same time they are unable to hit their target payout levels for higher performers. So over the past couple of years, we've been seeing employers take a more segmented approach to salary increase allocations, so with more focus on high performers, so carving out the larger percentage of that compensation increase budget and allocating it to those high performers or above exceeding expectations folks with a smaller amount to the meets and really nothing to the folks that are not meeting expectations. So this is definitely something we're seeing more and more in the market. So here are some quick assessment questions to get you thinking about your organization. As far as evaluating your employer value proposition, some things to think about are you clear on why people would be attracted and committed to your organization? What are your differentiators and how are these communicated? So not only communicated in your brand out there to prospective employees, but internally, how are you reinforcing the value internally with your staff? And with regard to tools and systems, how do you know that your reward and recognition programs are delivering the desired outcomes? So examples to gauge that would be surveys, motivation and stay interviews that I mentioned before, or really just simply regular dialogue and between leadership and employees, or even looking at your performance results. And lastly, what talent management practices have you implemented that identify and develop top talent? So what's working well, and maybe where are there some gaps that you can make some tweaks? So key trends and strategies continue to be culture. This seems to be top of mind for a lot of folks. And culture really, it's one of those things that doesn't cost a lot of money a lot of times. So it's where you can differentiate yourself and build your employment value proposition around. So culture is really just all about knowing who you are as an organization and why you do it, and hiring people who believe the same. Leadership excellence is really focused on hiring, positioning, and equipping people to fulfill their potential. Training and development programs really should be targeted at competencies needed to deliver on your business objectives versus the one-size-fits-all approach. Structured and visible plans for career pathing, whether that be up, down, or across the organization, are really important. Rewards and recognition cater to your specific culture with participation from peers and leadership. One of the greatest things that we've done is we've implemented a peer spot bonus and peer feedback program here at Xenium, and that's just really been great in building some team commitment and support and getting people the recognition that they need. Not that leadership shouldn't be doing that, but it means a lot when it comes from your peers. A lot of times that has more impact for people than when it comes from your superiors. Flexible work environment is the last thing on the list here of the top trends and strategies, and that really goes back to those tools, equipment, and really giving people the control about how to do their job and with some flexibility that provides them some balance and wellness. So every company is unique, so it deserves its own approach and brand, of course. However, you may consider some of these strategies that some of the best companies have used. After all, 0 to 2% turnover can't be bad for business. We're looking at some of the more successful organizations. So with that, I will turn it over to Brandon as the moderator to look at some questions, and I'm happy to help field any questions you might have.
Thank you, Susie. Great job. We're getting a few questions coming in, so I'll address those shortly. Just wanted to remind everybody that they can enter a question into the chat window, and we'll kind of filter through those as they come in. So, Susie, we'll start off with one of the first questions we got actually ahead of the webinar, so we do appreciate those when those questions come in ahead of time. One of the questions is, when does turnover have a positive impact on the organization?
Yeah, I mean, generally people think of turnover as negative, but I agree. There are some situations where turnover can be a good thing, and a lot of times we see that happening. One, when there's not the right person in the role and they're not a right fit for the organization, or when there is some organizational shift and change going on, particularly with culture. So it may be that, you know, the organization is getting very clear about who they are and why they're doing it, and certain folks are recognizing that they're not fitting into that bigger picture, and despite maybe efforts to get them engaged, it's not a good fit. So certainly in those cases, you know, I say set them free is probably the nicest way to approach it or say it. One of the things that I see a lot in companies that have really strong cultures is that when a new person comes in that does not share the same values, so, you know, despite your best efforts in the hiring process, it's not an exact science. So you may have someone that, you know, it does not end up being an ideal fit and, you know, is not drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak. And in stronger cultures, those folks who don't fit in will generally recognize that pretty quickly and often self-select out.
Perfect. Early on in the presentation, you were touching on culture development, and one of the things you touched on briefly was the culture committee. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the culture committee, how to develop one, how much time should be spent on it, and really just maybe from your experience what companies have done?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard all different kinds of names, from, you know, culture committee to celebration squad, or Xenium we have, or Excite. Generally, it doesn't consist of more than 10 people, and you know, of course, that's going to vary based on the size of your organization. But ideally, you have equal representation throughout the organization in terms of business area, level, and tenure, so that it provides for some good perspective. But those folks are really focused on ensuring that the values and those expectations and behaviors that are associated with those values are living and breathing into all of the people practices. And, you know, I know within Xenium, our Excite team has a fair amount of autonomy to propose and make recommendations for our internal HR practices, whether it be onboarding or recognition programs. And we even have a budget assigned to us that we can decide how to spend it on rewards and recognition, and then also on team building. So as opposed to having, you know, the company picnic kind of idea, or the, you know, team building activities fall in HR, which oftentimes they do, whoever inherits those in HR, and doesn't have time to do it, this provides an opportunity for people within the organization to not only work together as a team and engage, but bring all their ideas to the table. They're empowered to be creative and innovative, and you know, get everybody on board with those things. So we've found it to be really, I know internally, and I've seen it in other organizations, be really beneficial in driving that culture integration forward.
Yeah, and I can actually, you know, support what you're saying there, Susie, because you and I are both on the Excite committee at Xenium, and for us, we're an extension of the senior leadership, and we're able to make decisions at the employee level that you know, most people maybe they don't get a chance to do all the time. So it definitely does help from a culture and morale perspective, I would say.
And actually, I would say if you're looking to, you know, especially smaller businesses who struggle with, gosh, you know, I don't have anywhere for my people to go. You know, I have a lot of people topping out in their roles. How do I keep them engaged and keep them here? Because we're just not growing fast enough for them. And I have these high-achieving people. Well, this is a way to do it. So if you have these types of committees, or, you know, opportunities that people are interested in and where they shine, then this is that's an example, another one that people can get involved in and be engaged and be a part of really making a difference within an organization.
And that's a good segue into one of the questions that we got a little bit ago was the fact that for some small organizations, it's difficult for the organization and certain talent within the organization, a great employee, to grow at the same level. So what this person had said is they often promote employees by giving them a new title, but their day-to-day activities don't necessarily change because the organization just it's not quite there yet. So from your perspective, what's the right thing to do? Do they, entice them new opportunities, hold them back? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say, in my experience, people are caring less and less about titles. I think that has something to do with the generational differences, but there's definitely movement in that area. So title these days doesn't carry the same amount of weight as maybe it did years back, or for people of prior generations. So I would do my best, if there's no upward mobility within the organization, to create challenging assignments around solving business problems, provide opportunities for those people based on their strengths, to help train or mentor other people. It's interesting, I think, of us internally, because we've been in that position as well. It's easier for me to talk about Xenium than their clients, but we've discovered that we have people in HR who, on their own, are passionate about writing children's books. So they're, editors and authors, and we've actually invited that individual to help do some writing for marketing and our website. And it's been a great opportunity for both parties. So I think you really just need to get creative and and as opposed to focusing on title, enriching the work that they can be doing, and looking at their strengths and their interests, and see how you can leverage those and allowing them to contribute in different areas.
Great. The next question we have is on stay interviews. You briefly touched on it a little bit ago. Could you share the best ways to implement stay interviews? And before you jump in, I actually wanted to mention that if you go to xeniumhr.com/blog, we actually did a podcast with Molly Kelly, one of our HR business partners here, on stay interviews. And there's both an audio interview version and transcript if you want to just read instead. But if you go to the blog, there's some good content on that. So, Susie, go ahead and answer that if you want.
Yeah, I would suggest that, because Molly's done a lot of stay interviews herself. So
yes, she has.
She's conducted them. So I would generally recommend an objective third party to conduct those if you're really trying to get to the heart of how people are feeling. You can always do the anonymous electronic survey, but I think a lot of times you glean more, or even read between the lines, if you have some neutral party that comes in and sits down with individuals and asks them really specific questions about, why that individual works there, and why, why do they stay, and what do they feel are the key differentiators and that employer's value proposition, and maybe where are the gaps based on their experience. So in an interview, it allows you to kind of dig a little bit deeper and get information, and then the third party can compile that and look for consistencies and themes, and then report that back to the business owner and develop an action plan from there. I think if you're not asking the questions, you don't necessarily know.
Yeah, it could be too late at that point if you don't ask questions. Good. So the next question I love, Susie, we actually spent some time in developing questions for this. But during the recruiting process, how could you identify whether candidates share the same values as the organization and that they'll actually fit within the culture. So maybe, you can talk at a high level about that and then maybe talk about what we did at Xenium recently.
Yeah. So a huge thing in the interviewing process to really tap into cultural fit, and I think a lot of people are recognizing that more and more. So in terms of just basic interviewing skills, of course you want to focus on behavioral-based questions. So, being that the past performance predicts future performance. So same with culture questions. So first of all, you really need to have a clear picture of what you're looking for, and that requires you to know who you are as an organization and what your values are. And then beyond that, like I mentioned before, what are the key actions or behaviors that are consistent with those values? So if I say, a generic value of an organization may be integrity. If I say, one of our values is integrity, and what that looks like in terms of demonstration is someone who honors their commitments, who can be counted on to follow through, demonstrates trust and honesty, those types of things. So the more specific you can be in defining what that looks like, then you can start structuring or crafting your interview questions around that. General questions could even be, tell me about a past company that you or organization that you worked for where you did not feel like there was an alignment between your values and their values. Or adversely, tell me about a work experience, the best one where you felt like there was perfect alignment culturally for you, and what did that look like? What did the leadership look like? What did the work environment look like? How did people interact? That type of thing, so you can get a sense for what's really important to them. And then you mentioned Xenium. We did that internally with Xenium. We used our promise that we created that outlines our values and key actions, and we built a set of culture interview questions around that all hiring managers use in conjunction with their job-related questions.
Excellent. We're going to do one more question, and then we're going to wrap up here. You talked about mentorship a little bit ago, and maybe give folks on the webinar a sense for how mentorship programs should be developed, if it's a formal program, if you should just promote mentorship, whether it's an internal or external person, and maybe just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the larger organization you are, the more structured and formal you probably would like to be with it. But at minimum, I mean, you want to provide the folks who are participating in the program as the mentor and mentee with some resources or tools for how, in terms of agreements, how these programs work the most effectively, what are maybe some tools in setting goals and scheduling meetings at minimum. Also, the selection process is really important. So, the whole idea of mentorship is that you're paired with someone who's not your direct supervisor or who has necessarily the ability to influence you in your current role. So you want to be careful about selecting and matching people up based on that, but also maybe some strengths and interests and differences in communication styles, so that it provides for the most productive experience. Mentors can be selected outside of the organization. I think inside the organization is really valuable because two people are developing in the process. There's a lot of growth opportunity for the mentor in that process as well. So, it's a mutually beneficial type opportunity in that sense. So yeah, I mean, before I would just cut people loose and say, hey, invite a mentor and start having meetings, I would give them at least some training and some guidance and figure out what your selection process is going to be, get people committed to being in the mentor role and understanding what's involved and what the level of commitment is before I, cut people loose.
Excellent. Well, that wraps up the Q&A portion of the webinar and the webinar overall. Just put the information up on the screen here. If you need to get in touch with us, you can send us an email with a question to info@xeniumhr.com. And if you, depending on how everybody likes to get their information a little differently, but you can subscribe to our email updates, which will prompt you when there's a blog update, or if we have events coming up, we'll prompt you with that. You can also follow us on social media as well. As I mentioned earlier in the session, we have a live event coming up, a workshop on attracting and retaining talent, which Susie will be presenting and moderating the panel. That's on April 16th at 8:30 a.m., and it actually goes till 10:30, so it's a 2-hour workshop. It's in our facility at Tualatin, Oregon. Promo code for the event, if you go to the registration page, you can input the promo code TALENTWEBINAR, and that'll give you 20% off. I believe we still have the early bird special going on, so that's at an $89 price point. With 20% off, that'll actually give you a steeper discount than if you wait 3 weeks and in at the $119 level. So for folks that do want to attend, Talent Webinar is a promo code, and we'll follow up with the recording slides, and we'll give the promo code away in the email again. So thank you, everybody, for attending, and Susie, thank you for presenting on this topic. It's something that's on everybody's mind nowadays, I believe. So have a good rest of your day, everybody.